Welcome to Mountlake Terrace Election Watch 2013. I'm your host, Teresa Wippel, and tonight we are interviewing Stephen Barnes, who is a candidate for position 3 on the Mountlake Terrace City Council. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. We would like to start by asking you to talk about your background and also why you want to be on the Mountlake Terrace City Council.
Okay. Well, I am a long-time Mountlake Terrace resident, been there for 27 years. Raised my 3 children there together with my wife, of course. We went through many of the Mountlake Terrace activities and the Edmond School District activities. I love Mountlake Terrace. It's been home for us for a very long time. We also had opportunity to be involved in public and private groups. We started, at least I'm pretty sure that we were the ones that started one of the advertising programs that went with student plays, where we would solicit from the businesses, but also from the parents to help support the program in that way. We did that, and it's still going on today, similar to what we started. I'm involved in a couple private boards, and look forward to participating in the election process, but also with the vote of the people taking office in the City Council.
What would be your first priority if you won a seat on the council?
I feel that one of the things that drew me in to this pursuit is finding that the openness with which the citizens are presented is not as clear as it could be, and certainly not in a way that a citizen would frame, for example, statistics that have been used. I could get into specifics, but basically there's been a lot of statistical juggling in order to achieve points that represent for me a lack of honesty. And I would like to restore a certain level of openness towards the citizens, honesty. I'd like to see those values be presented more, materials that are presented in a way that the people can understand, so that they and not the crafting of the issues is what wins the day.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest problem or challenge facing Mountlake Terrace right now?
Well, we have a lot of things going on, a tremendous amount of issues that are present. The current City Council has for years now been pursuing a citification process where they have tried to create a downtown area, making it palatable for developers to come in and put 4, 5, 6, 7-story buildings. It hasn't been accepted by builders at a time where interest rates were the lowest they possibly could have been, and the easiest time to come in and do that. So there's a question whether that should be the priority, that if you look at minutes that have been taken and even the public records, the newsletters that they've given out, the emphasis is fairly distorted relative to what we in gentle suburbia would want.
Okay. And that one of those buildings is, of course, Arbor Village. That's the area we're talking about.
Arbor Village is a preview of what the current City Council would like to see in downtown. It's distorted, though. I mean, it gives a false impression because it's down in the dip. And at 5 stories in the dip, from just 2 blocks away, it looks like maybe 2 stories. So if that were up on the hill, going towards the freeway, which they are allowing 5 and 6 story on the right side, which would be the north side of 236. And they've recently approved, against my objection, I objected in terms of good faith towards the people. They increased it from 3-story to 4-story possible. Anyway, so that area would be it would be like going through a valley if what they envision is fully realized in the way that the current city council envisions it. One of my concerns is that there could be a steamroller effect. And so I appealed to them at one of the city council meetings to keep that level at 3, because they could go 4 there, and then people with 1- and 2-story homes looking up at these monstrosities, they could just keep going and consume the whole of the Gateway District. And I think that should come to a stop. And one of the things that I would want to see is that we be clear. Even in 2009, they increased the levels that they had previously planned from 6 to 7, from townhouse to 4-story in certain areas. So there's been a creeping cityfication desire. It hasn't been realized, but a desire that I would like to see contained. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying let's contain it and make sure that the citizens who came to Mount Lake Terrace for the gentle suburbia that it offers actually be able to keep that which they desired Mount Lake Terrace for.
Okay, so you've got an area right now that obviously there was a coding change to allow for those buildings to be built.
Right.
Would you favor restricting the area that code applies to, or what would you do if you were on the council?
Well, I would want to assure that it doesn't keep seeping out.
So keep it where it is.
We're not looking to recreate Little Bellevue. We have a lovely town, and most people live there because they love the style of life that it offers. And so in my view, and I believe that is a citizen view, I've talked to many citizens, in my view, that doesn't necessarily include skyscrapers.
What, of course, one of the big issues that we've been talking about with folks is what to do with the temporary city hall, and the fact that the city's now paying rent on it, and with the unsuccessful bid to pass the measure to build the civic center. What do you think should be the next steps for the city related to that?
Well, the city, although they would like us to believe that there's a pressing need to do something, the city is in a lease which allows them it's not an automatic extension, but a basic extension of their lease with no real problems. In fact, probably a reduction of rent for the next 3 years. So they're not in a time crunch. The only thing they're in a time crunch for is the $2 million plus short-term loan that they took out 3-4 years ago that they haven't even started to pay back. But in terms of what they need to do right away, there's no crunch that needs to be reacted to. I think that we might even look, one of the other candidates, Len French, put together numbers showing the cost of possession, the mortgage that they showed in their graphics, $43 million over 30 years. The cost of possession equaling a similar cost of possession on the renting side, which is their base rent, would be $43 million for the mortgage versus $18 million for rent. To me, that looks like rent would maybe be a good option, unless we can find a building or a situation which allows us to go for less. One of the options their consultants had in, I think it was 2008, was that they could build everything that they wanted, their wish list, between $8 and at the very top $18 million. The city instead came to the citizens with $37 million, a grand edifice. So there was no attempt to live within the means of what was offered. And the comments on MLTNews at that time was, well, where's the $8 million building go? Because that's what their consultant suggested. And their response to that, this current city council, many of the members who are on the current city council. Their response to that was to ask for 37 million.
And this was the initial Civic
The
Center
initial
proposal
one,
we're talking
and the
about.
citizens rejected that out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
That was flatly rejected, I think 56% against. And then, of course, they came back in November of last year, and they offered 25 million, which was really only the reduction of one floor that they found another building for $3 million for. So they offered a reduction, but it was only because they'd found another way to do what they had in mind. And I think that was good. They bought, they bought part of the Linwood portion of a building that they had already partially owned, was what it was. And so they offered that in November, 25 million, and the citizens said no. Their consultants said, ask the opposition, talk with the opposition about it, and reduce the offer by 5 million. That would have brought them close to the 18 million top end of their consultants, and do the election in November of this year, of 2013. They said, no, we want to get it done as soon as possible. They considered February. Mayor Smith said, I'd love to do it in February, but they agreed to do it in April, which is when, having not talked with the opposition, having not dropped anything from it, it was exactly the same offer, 25 million. Their offer was rejected at the polls. Mm-hmm. So it's not listening that bothers me in that. And then the statistics they use, they said, for example, the average price per thousand over the balance of the period would be like 10 point something. I don't remember the exact number today, but that would have been a house way lower than the average value, which mm-hmm. they pegged at variously 208, 190, 196, depending on when you were talking to them. But all of those are much higher than the 10. It's more like 16 or 17 per thousand. So they were using statistics which the average person would not have accepted. They compared a 30-year mortgage, the essential cost of owning, versus the essential cost of renting, plus the other costs that they would have on this other side too.
Okay. So you've got rent on a building, you've got a failed proposal but you still need a place to permanently, probably eventually find a home for a city hall, right? Or do you? I mean, you can't rent forever, or is that an option at this point?
Well, I think that it's an option that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
Because if you're comparing 43 million to
right. 18
million, as a citizen who feels his back pocket being tugged, mm-hmm. you say, well, I don't know, maybe we need to look at that and drop this interim thing. In fact, I wrote an article mm-hmm. in my website, www.bettermlt.com, mm-hmm. on that very subject yesterday.
Okay. Do you think the city needs a gathering place, a central spot for people to go? Because I don't, regardless of the cost, whether it's 8 million or 20 million, mm-hmm. The one thing that it seems to me, and I've talked with other candidates about this, and they seem to all kind of agree on this one point, and that is there is no one kind of place for people to go that seems like the gathering place. And I don't know if a civic center campus would serve that purpose, but I think the proponents, that was one of the things, obviously one of their points. Do you think Mount Terrace needs a place like that?
Actually, in 2009, they were proposing that very idea for the recreation center, mm-hmm. expanding it next to the recreation center mm-hmm. so they wouldn't lose services. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what happened with that. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was just a sale that sailed away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened with that idea. Yes, it would be good if we had a central place. One of the proposals that was floated at one point was to take the land that we have currently and swap it with something on what the Mountain Lake Terrace is called Main Street, 56th. Maybe that would be a good idea. You know, I mean, I would certainly be open to ideas, but at this point, we do have the Ballinger building, which at least I know the senior centers, the senior center has offered to become a manager of that building, and that would provide some of those same services. Doesn't have to be just seniors that would use a facility like that. And they, as I understood it, were coming in more like lease managers to serve the greater good. That's certainly a great building and a great asset which has recently become available.
Okay, all right. Do you think that there needs to be a more concentrated effort by the city of Mount Lake Terrace to bring more economic development to the city? I mean, I know we're talking about some of the development that you're not too fond of in terms of the size, but are there other things do you think the city could do that might, you know, stimulate some more economic development in the city, or do you think it's good the way it is?
I know from I basically coming as a candidate, I'm having a learning curve. I'm getting into all kinds of documents and finding all kinds of interesting information, and I'm finding that the city has been churning. The city has been doing everything it could do, and in what, from a business standpoint, is the best possible climate to come in and do something, it hasn't happened. And so maybe it's time to refocus what is going on. Certainly there's been a few things that have come in, but just an example of that where you wonder, I think it was the last newsletter, they talked about a retirement home on 244th. Well, that building still has a for sale sign on it. So was that just a dream, just a maybe? Or, you know, or was it somebody want to step up and do this? What was, because they presented it as a fait accompli, as a completed issue, when in fact it wasn't. And so it makes you wonder. I think that they have been doing what they can do as a council to encourage growth, but for whatever reason, we're not getting it. You know, I know that they have paid a high-powered consultant to draw in businesses, but I don't see that we're getting a great return on that money. I don't know what to say, because we're so close to Seattle. There's a lot of reasons why we should be blossoming, but we're not, even in the most favorable from a business standpoint environment to do so.
And so I guess some people would say that that's why the development is being pushed the way it is in the, you know, the areas where the buildings are being built, and, you know, at a scale that, you know, some people don't like. But I guess, I mean, I've been talking to all the candidates, and I know that some would say that's part of that effort to get more development in, is to make those buildings, you know, more attractive, you know, to a variety of different people and bring more people into the city.
As investors, this would have been, this past period of time would have been the best time to come in, buy your land, and if you need to, wait it out. But why would you wait it out when the interest rates were the very possible lowest they could be? You wouldn't. You would jump in. So where are they? This makes me wonder whether Mount Lake Terrace City Council is pursuing the right vision based on the numbers of hours and the percentage of their focus that has gone to this effort.
Well, what about the brewery? You think that's going to be a positive addition to the city?
I'm excited. I think that's great. And it, you know, and businesses like that, welcome. They should be welcome here. And it should not be hard, for example, for the gentleman that owns the tennis court to get an adjustment instead of them basically sitting on his desire to develop. Even when some relatively high-powered political people came in and said, well, could you folks work on this? No, they did nothing. So there have been opportunities, I think, that have been missed that could have been made, but overall there hasn't been that storm of development that the city keeps saying is just around the corner. Starting, we could go back to newsletters, numbers of years ago. It hasn't happened.
Okay. Well, what about Sound Transit's proposal for bringing, they're bringing light rail to Mount Lake Terrace, at the transit center.
Right.
And they've also talked about having a station at 220th. What do you think about that?
I'm excited about it. And the reason is, I see our commercial development up on that 220th corridor. That's really where the commercial development has been. If, like the shopping center that's down there, could be, if there could be some additions, maybe in the Melody Hill area, which is, I understand, is currently, they're currently working on what's going to go in there. There are possibilities there that would be good, and having a station for what seems to be the center of our commercial activity, that would be a very positive thing for the city longer term.
What do you think is Mount Lake Terrace's greatest strength and its greatest weakness?
Well, I think Mount Lake Terrace is a very safe city. That was one of the things that I've always enjoyed. It's said that old Seattle cops don't die; they just move to Mount Lake Terrace.
Including the mayor.
Yes, and it's a safe place. It has beautiful parks. We've because of the change from a very focused development to a larger development, the Ballinger Park. It's wonderful that it's been added more actively, I would say, to the choices. They talked about putting extra docks there. Sounds good to me. I think that's a great idea. The schools are great here and have from time to time received acclaim, including from the Gates Foundation. We have a lot of things going for us. I wish that the downtown were flourishing as City Council says it's going to be just around the corner, but it isn't right now. That's not one of our strong points, in my view.
Okay. So that would be the weakness, the downtown?
The fact that whatever has been done, and including the consultants that they put in, that it has not, burst into flame with activity, it bothers me. It makes me wonder whether that's where we should be putting our efforts and money.
Okay. Well, we are now at a point where you can give your statement to folks about when they see your name on the ballot in November, or earlier than that, since we're doing it by mail.
Right.
What would they, what would you want to tell them to remind them of why they would want to vote for you?
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this interview, and I hope that some of your questions have been answered, and more of them can be answered at my website, www.bettermlt.com. The time here doesn't allow for all the possibilities that we could say. But I would like to help you as a citizen, be a voice for you, and represent you for more openness from the council, clear, truthful statements of what is going on, and a vote on the council which would represent you. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
You bet.